Shutdown stopped some basic government services. Here's an example. The Labor Department was scheduled today to release its weekly jobless claims, but the agency withheld that because, fill in the blank, of the government shutdown. Tomorrow's monthly jobs report also will not be released. But we have a glimpse into the job market through what's known as the ADP National Employment Report, which looks at the private sector in the U.S., and that data showed the U.S. lost 32,000 jobs last month. For analysis on this, I turn with confidence, as I always do, to Kelly O'Grady in New York. So the ADP number is a snapshot. It is a sometimes debated snapshot about what's actually happening in the labor market, but it's the best snapshot we currently have.
Well, that's right. And that's why you are going to see the Federal Reserve rely more on some of these alternative data sources because we aren't getting that jobs report. I was looking through the ADP report, Major, and for those at home, you know, the ADP report is they are a payroll company, right? So they have data in terms of what paychecks are being sent out, and they're able to triangulate the number of hiring, firings, things like that. And I thought what was interesting is that where the sectors that lost the most jobs from in September, it was really those industries that are driven by consumer demand. So think about travel and leisure, hospitality, restaurants. You're not going to go out and hire en masse if you don't have folks coming in. And of course, we have talked about this. We have seen especially low-income folks pull back a little bit on their spending because they are concerned with this uncertainty. The other data point that I want to bring in, Major, was another labor report that we got, the Challenger report. And it said that year to date, come September, we saw the lowest hiring numbers for the year since 2009. So what does that tell you? We have hired at the slowest rate since we were recovering from the Great Recession. Now, it doesn't mean that we're seeing mass firings, but it really speaks to those companies that have just pressed pause because of the uncertainty and said, I just don't see the reason to hire a bunch of people right now.
And Kelly, it sounds like we need some different terminology because we have GDP growth that looks, if not robust, certainly healthy. And yet we have this job market that seems soft and stressed. And those things don't typically align. When you have growth above 2%, you usually have some kind of noticeable and beneficial job growth. But we have that above 2%, and yet job growth continues to lag. That seems to be an interesting phenomenon.
It is, but I do want to break down that GDP piece because Q2, right, the second quarter, April to June, was quite positive, right, above 3%. But then if you go back to the first quarter, it was really, really struggling. It was negative. So when you put those two together, you don't see that rebound that we got in the second quarter. And a lot of it had to do with imports and exports that we've talked about before. But what I do want to emphasize is that the folks that are sort of fueling that GDP growth. Because remember, 2/3 of GDP is consumer spending. The heavy lifting is being done by that upper income group, the folks that are not losing their jobs, that are very comfortable, that are getting good salaries. And we really are seeing the lower income folks take that step back. And so, yes, we don't have the mass firings, but what I do want to put a button on is that if you are out of work, which some of these federal workers, as you were just talking about, may be soon, then you're going to have a lot harder of a time finding a job. And when that starts to pick up more and more and you see more people have that lag time, that's when you're going to see it impact GDP growth.
One data point this year has been consistent. Longer and longer time of jobless Americans unable to find that next job. Kelly O'Grady, as always, thank you so very, very much.